Picture this: a massive lumbering aircraft, one that first took flight when Dwight Eisenhower was in the White House, is now flying freely over the skies of one of the most heavily defended nations on Earth. No stealth coating, no hypersonic speed, just raw, devastating payload capacity, and the sheer audacity of a superpower that no longer needs to hide. That aircraft is the B-52 Stratofortress. And what it is doing over Iran right now is not just a military milestone. It is a statement, a declaration, a signal to the entire world that this campaign has crossed a threshold that Iran's regime never wanted to see crossed. We are talking about a Cold War-era bomber, one that entered service in 1961, flying overland into Iranian airspace. Not skirting the edges, not launching cruise missiles from a safe distance, but penetrating deep over the Iranian mainland, releasing 2,000-pound bunker-busting bombs and triggering chain reactions of explosions that are shaking cities to their foundations. Fireballs are rising over Isfahan right now. The videos are coming in. The ground is shaking, and Iran has no answer. This is the story of how America went from air superiority to total air supremacy over Iran. This is the story of what the B-52 is doing in Isfahan, and why what happens in the next 2 to 3 weeks could determine not just the future of Iran's military, but the future of its nuclear program entirely. On March 31st, during a briefing at the Department of Defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff made an announcement that sent shockwaves through defense circles around the world. He confirmed that the United States had begun conducting overland B-52 missions inside Iran, not standoff strikes, not coast-hugging runs, but overland missions. The distinction is enormous. As the chairman put it, given the increase in air superiority, we have successfully started to conduct the first overland B-52 missions, which allow us to continue to get on top of the enemy. Think about what that means. The B-52 is not a stealth aircraft. It is not designed to slip past radar undetected. It is enormous, loud, and visible. And yet, it is now flying over Iran with what the general himself described as near impunity. That single word overland tells you everything about the state of Iran's air defenses in the 5th week of this campaign. But before we get into exactly what those B-52s are targeting, we need to understand how we got here. This is the result of over 30 days of systematic, methodical destruction of one of the most elaborate layered air defense networks in the Middle East. The operation began on February 28, 2026. The United States and its allies launched coordinated, extensive strikes against a wide range of targets in Iran: leadership compounds, missile production sites, air defense batteries, naval assets, and the remnants of Iran's nuclear program. The operation was announced not through a traditional press conference, but through a social media post in the early morning hours, Eastern Time. In that post, the entire campaign was framed as a direct consequence of Iran's decades-long refusal to renounce its nuclear ambitions. The 4 stated military objectives were stark and sweeping: prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, destroy its missile arsenal and production sites, degrade its proxy networks, and annihilate its navy. That final point has largely been achieved. Major destruction of Iran's naval assets has already been confirmed, including its ships and at least 1 key submarine. The navy that Iran used to threaten the Strait of Hormuz is no longer an effective fighting force. But it is the air defense story that directly explains why B-52s are now flying overland. Within the first week of the operation, reports indicated that 80% of Iran's air defense systems had been destroyed. 80% gone. But 80% was not enough, because Iran had built its air defense network specifically to prevent the kind of aerial freedom that the United States is now exercising. Iran had the Bavar 373, a domestically produced system with a maximum detection range of nearly 200 miles. It had S-300 PMU-2 batteries purchased from Russia, systems that should have been capable of targeting even older, slower, larger aircraft. On paper, the B-52 was supposed to be exactly the kind of platform that Iran's network was designed to kill. The problem is that paper no longer matches reality. Speaking about the state of Iran's air defenses earlier in the campaign, A senior commander was blunt, saying that most of their higher-end surface-to-air missile systems are not factors at this point, and that fighter jets could now fly around with what he described as relative impunity. That was 3 weeks before the overland B-52 missions were announced. In those 3 weeks, the coalition continued chipping away. Isolated pockets of air defenses remain. Shoulder-mounted manpad systems still exist across the country. But the network that was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of air supremacy has been dismantled battery by battery, node by node. And now the B-52 is doing what the B-52 was built to do. The B-52 has been quietly receiving upgrades that make it even more effective in an environment like Iran. A radar modernization program has been developing for the aging bomber. The upgrades make the B-52 significantly more resistant to electronic warfare techniques, and that matters because electronic warfare is one of the few remaining arrows in Iran's defense quiver. The first ferry flight of a B-52 equipped with this new radar system took place in December 2025. That means the bombers currently operating over Iran may already have this upgrade installed. Iran built its electronic warfare capabilities partly with the B-52 in mind. Now, even that defense has been neutralized. The B-52 is capable of launching the widest array of weapons of any aircraft in the American inventory: gravity bombs, precision-guided munitions, JDAMs, bunker busters, cluster bombs, sea mines, cruise missiles, and if it ever came to it, nuclear warheads, with a payload capacity of 70,000 pounds. No other aircraft in America's arsenal can deliver more firepower in a single sortie. Commanders have also revealed that the coalition has shifted to what is called dynamic targeting, meaning aircraft are receiving updated target assignments, while airborne and in some cases are being tasked with locating and engaging targets autonomously. Iran never knows what the next bomber is carrying. It never knows which city will be next. That uncertainty is itself a weapon. Now let's talk about Isfahan, because if there is one city at the center of this new phase of the operation, it is Isfahan. And the story of what is happening there is remarkable and still unfolding. Isfahan is not new to American bombing runs. During a previous campaign, B-2 Spirit stealth bombers armed with 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators, the most powerful conventional bombs in the American arsenal, were deployed to strike Isfahan's nuclear facilities. That campaign dealt a significant blow to Iran's nuclear program, decimating enrichment facilities at Fordo and Natanz and destroying Iran's metallurgy facilities in Isfahan itself. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency later confirmed that while those strikes caused major damage, not everything was destroyed. And that is the core problem, the core reason Isfahan remains so central to this conflict. According to the IAEA, Iran is believed to have stockpiled roughly 970 pounds of uranium, enriched to 60% purity. That is just below the 90% threshold required for weapons-grade material. More than half of that enriched uranium is believed to be stored in tunnels more than 300 feet beneath the surface in a nuclear facility near Isfahan. Iran has not made significant efforts to rehabilitate its destroyed enrichment infrastructure since the previous campaign, but it still has this uranium, and that uranium is the unfinished business of this entire conflict. So when B-52s arrived over Isfahan carrying GBU-31 bunker-busting bombs, each delivering 2,000 pounds of explosive power, the world watched closely. The footage that followed was extraordinary. Eyewitness videos from inside the city showed the same thing repeatedly. Earth-rattling explosions sending enormous fireballs into the sky, followed by massive plumes of smoke. In several clips, entire chain reactions of secondary explosions are visible, a clear indicator of munitions being detonated on the ground, rather than simply the impact of a single bomb. The president himself used his social media account to share footage of these chain reaction strikes. Isfahan is home to the largest missile assembly and production complex in Iran, a site built in the 1980s with documented assistance from other nations. It is where Iran developed its Shahab 4 system, believed by Western analysts to be designed as a launch vehicle for long-range weapons. It is where M-class missiles and anti-ship missiles have been produced. Based on the scale and nature of the explosions seen in the footage, Analysts believe the B-52s struck hardened underground ammunition depots beneath the city. The secondary explosions tell the story. When an ammunition depot goes up, it does not just explode once. The B-52 strikes were not limited to Isfahan. Tehran has been targeted. Karaj, home to several key industrial zones, has also been struck. And crucially, the coalition dropped additional bunker-busting munitions into the mountainous regions surrounding Isfahan, triggering yet more secondary explosions as Iran's missile stockpiles were consumed by fire. The campaign has now expanded to target Iran's industrial base directly: steel manufacturing plants, petrochemical facilities, and nuclear-related infrastructure. This is no longer purely a campaign against military hardware. The operation is now targeting Iran's capacity to rebuild. But there is more to this story, and this is the part that nobody saw coming. Isfahan is likely the storage site for Iran's remaining highly enriched uranium, nearly 1,000 pounds of material enriched to 60% sitting in tunnels 300 feet underground. The United States does not want that uranium to remain accessible. According to reporting, the president was briefed on a complex and daring plan to insert ground forces, likely special operations troops, directly into Iran to physically secure or remove that nuclear material. The plan would involve flying and excavation equipment, constructing a temporary runway capable of accommodating cargo aircraft, and then extracting the radioactive material before withdrawing. This plan was requested weeks earlier and remains under active consideration. It carries enormous risk. Every minute that troops spend at an underground nuclear facility in Isfahan is a minute they are exposed to whatever missile and drone capability Iran still has. But here is where the B-52 strikes may be doing something far more subtle than what appears on the surface. One theory suggests that at least some of the B-52 bunker-busting strikes over Isfahan may have had a very specific and hidden objective: collapsing the tunnel networks that lead into Iran's uranium storage sites. The idea is straightforward. If the coalition can use its bunker-busting bombs to cave in the tunnels, the uranium becomes inaccessible to Iran. No special forces raid needed, no extraction mission, just sealed tunnels and uranium that Iran cannot reach for months, possibly over a year. According to this theory, the bombers may have coordinated their strikes in such a way that the tunnels were collapsed without destroying the uranium itself, which is now buried under approximately 100 meters, nearly 330 feet, of solid rock. The dramatic fireballs were the ammunition depots, the missile stockpiles, the pyrotechnics that captured every headline and every social media feed. But beneath all of that spectacle, the theory suggests quieter bombs were collapsing, quieter tunnels, achieving the most important objective of the entire campaign. It is a theory. It has not been confirmed, but the more you think about it, the harder it is to dismiss. And that brings us to where the operation stands right now. The announcement of the overland B-52 missions was paired with a shift to dynamic targeting across the entire campaign. Command has confirmed that Iran's ballistic missile launch rate has fallen by 90% from the first day of the war, and drone launch rates have fallen by 83%. Iran's capacity to fight back has been catastrophically degraded. As of early April 2026, confirmed casualties include over 300 wounded and 13 killed, figures that reflect the reality that this is a genuine combat operation, not a one-sided demonstration. Iran, for its part, has not stopped trying. Following the B-52 strikes in Isfahan, Iran launched a barrage of missiles toward Israel. Most were intercepted or landed in open areas with no casualties, though some reports indicated that at least one Iranian ballistic missile struck its target and injured 16 people. Iran also struck an oil tanker in the Persian Gulf and targeted civilian water infrastructure, drawing international humanitarian law condemnations. The regime is signaling that it has not given up, but the signals are growing weaker. And then came the most remarkable diplomatic twist of the entire conflict. On the morning of March 31st, the president posted to social media claiming that Iran's new regime president had asked the United States for a ceasefire. The president indicated He would consider a halt to hostilities if Iran reopened the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has been using to choke global oil supplies since the start of the conflict. Oil prices have surged. Global energy markets are on edge. The Strait of Hormuz question is in many ways the economic heart of this entire conflict. But Iran denied everything. Iran's foreign minister told reporters that his country was not seeking a ceasefire. What Iran wanted, he said, was a complete end to hostilities combined with guarantees against future attacks and compensation for all of the damage inflicted during the operation. Those are not ceasefire terms. Those are the demands of a country that believes it has leverage it no longer has, and so the B-52s keep flying. There is another twist on top of that. The president declared that a deal might not even be necessary, saying he believes his country will be able to finish the job in Iran within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The stated assessment was blunt. We have set them back 15 to 20 years. They have no navy, no military, no air force. The remaining question is the nuclear one, and that is precisely where the B-52s are pointed. 2 to 3 weeks of additional strikes on production facilities, centrifuge infrastructure, and whatever nuclear-adjacent sites remain could remove the nuclear question from the table entirely without a single troop touching Iranian soil. This is the strategic logic of what we are watching. It is not just about Isfahan. It is not just about bunker busters and fireballs. It is about a deliberate multi-layered campaign to strip Iran of its nuclear potential so completely that even if its regime survives, the capability does not. The B-52's role in this campaign has evolved dramatically since the beginning. During the first 100 hours of the operation, B-52s were already being used to strike Iranian ballistic missile sites and command and control infrastructure. Those initial strikes targeted infrastructure directly linked to Iran's missile forces, including the command nodes responsible for coordinating missile launches. But those early B-52 strikes were fundamentally different from what we are seeing now. Those early missions used standoff munitions, specifically cruise missiles, which allow the B-52 to attack from hundreds of miles away without entering contested airspace. That was caution. That was the recognition that Iran still had enough air defenses to present a risk to a large, non-stealthy platform like the B-52. The use of stealth fighters loaded with sensors to carve out safe corridors for the bombers was almost certainly part of the strategy. Get the B-52 into a safe lane, release its weapons from range, and get out. That phase is over. The corridors have become highways. The entire country is, for all practical purposes, navigable. And the shift from standoff munitions to direct bunker busting runs over land is the single most tangible demonstration of how complete the air defense dismantlement has been. It is worth pausing to appreciate just how far the United States has pushed this. Iran built its layered air defense network over decades. It purchased the best Russian systems available. It developed its own indigenous platforms. It trained its operators. It designed the network specifically to deter and defeat exactly the kind of aerial campaign that the United States is now conducting freely. And within 30 days, that network went from being a formidable deterrent to being, in the words of one commander, not a factor. B-52H Stratofortress bombers have been operating out of air bases in England, flying fully loaded with 20 GBU 31 2,000-pound JDAMs per sortie, 20 bunker-busting bombs per aircraft per mission. In the days before the announcement, eagle-eyed analysts spotted activity on satellite imagery, B-52s and other aircraft being loaded with exactly the types of JDAMs that subsequently appeared over Isfahan. The logistics of this campaign were visible to those who knew what to look for. Additional texture comes from reports of electronic warfare assets being activated to actively jam Iranian radar, navigation, and command communications across the entire theater. This was described by analysts as a qualitative shift from purely kinetic operations, electronic warfare as a complement to the bombing campaign, effectively blinding and silencing whatever isolated air defense remnants remain. That same day, coalition strikes hit missile complexes, airport fuel storage facilities, and defense electronics hubs. Multiple commanders were eliminated. The campaign is not slowing down, and yet we should acknowledge the human cost of all of this because numbers matter. Confirmed casualties stand at over 300 wounded and at least 13 killed. 6 soldiers died in a drone strike in one country. Another was killed elsewhere. 6 airmen perished when a refueling tanker went down over friendly territory. These are real losses absorbed by a campaign that the president has framed as nearing completion. Iran's retaliatory efforts, while degraded, have also produced civilian casualties in Israel and beyond. A ballistic missile that struck Israel injured 16 people. Iran struck civilian water infrastructure elsewhere, drawing international condemnation. Proxy forces launched over 70 missile salvos at northern Israel. Other groups formally entered the war, launching their first ballistic missile attacks at southern Israel. The conflict has spread well beyond its original boundaries, even as Iran's core military capacity collapses. This is the paradox of a regime in its final strategic moments. It can no longer win. It cannot defend its skies. It cannot protect its cities. It cannot maintain its missile launch rates. But it can still reach out and cause pain. And that is precisely why the next 2 to 3 weeks are so critical. The coalition needs to finish what it started before Iran's remaining proxy and ballistic missile capabilities inflict casualties it cannot justify. The B-52 is the answer to that timeline. With its versatility, payload capacity, and the freedom to fly anywhere over Iran, the B-52 can strike faster than Iran can regenerate. Each mission can carry 20 JDAMs. Each mission can be assigned new targets while airborne. Each mission deploys into a country that no longer has the tools to stop it. The dynamic targeting doctrine is not just about flexibility. It is about speed. It is about overwhelming Iran's ability to react, to hide, to relocate. By the time Iran figures out what was just destroyed, the next wave is already inbound. There is something almost poetic in a grim analytical sense about the B-52's role in this conflict. This aircraft was designed during the height of the Cold War to penetrate Soviet air defenses and deliver nuclear weapons over Moscow. It never did that. The Cold War ended. The B-52 lingered in the inventory, upgraded and modernized, but always seen as the unglamorous workhorse standing in the shadow of more advanced fighters and bombers. The stealth fighters are the scalpels, precise, invisible, extraordinary. The B-52 is the wrecking ball. And when a country's air defenses are as shattered as Iran's are today, you do not need a scalpel. You need the wrecking ball, and you need it to swing 40 times, 50 times, until there is nothing left worth defending. The announcement from the chairman was not just a tactical update. It was the public declaration that the United States has achieved something in Iran's skies that no military planner on the Iranian side ever wanted to see achieved. Air supremacy, not superiority. Supremacy. The ability to fly the least stealthy bomber in the American inventory at 50,000 feet over the most strategically sensitive cities in the country and face no meaningful threat. The question now is whether Iran's regime will seek terms before the B-52s complete their work, or whether they will hold out and watch the last of their military-industrial base get reduced to rubble 1 2,000-pound bomb at a time. The president has said 2 to 3 weeks. The B-52s are already flying, and in Isfahan, underground beneath 330 feet of solid rock, the enriched uranium that started this entire confrontation may already be sealed away from the people who wanted to use it to threaten the world. That is the story of America's B-52s in this campaign. The situation continues to develop at breathtaking speed, and every day brings new developments that you cannot afford to miss.